So this video is about just overall navigation within QuickBooks Online. So maybe you just set up a new QuickBooks Online file, or maybe you've been using it for a little bit, but you're just unsure, not very confident as to where everything is, not really interested in a very detailed, specific examples how to do certain things, but just kind of just an overview of QuickBooks Online, how it navigates, how it flows, things like that. So hopefully this video will help you out a little bit with there. So probably the main places to where you're going to be kind of going within QuickBooks Online, I would say, is this gear icon in the top right, which is the settings icon, but also under the settings, you're going to see these lists. We'll go into the details about these here in a second. The plus new in the top left, that's a really quick, just basically if you want to do an action in QuickBooks Online, create a bank deposit, create an invoice, create a bill, that's where you can quickly get there. So you can see that here, and we're going to, again, that more detail there. And then the left panel here, of course. So your banking feed, sales, expenses, things like that. One thing I want to mention with QuickBooks Online, one thing that I really like about it is that there's usually at least 2, sometimes 3 or more ways to get to the same location. So you can kind of choose your own workflow, the way that you remember or makes most sense to you. And also you don't have to exactly memorize one specific way to get to a certain location. Usually there's multiple routes, multiple paths you can take to get to where you want to go. I think that's one of the really great things about QuickBooks Online. So I'll try to show you as much as possible in this video, kind of how the way that makes the most sense to me to get to a certain place. And then I'll quickly show you the other alternative routes you can take and where other locations where those same places are. And this will make more sense as we go, I'm sure. But so that you can have an idea of all the different ways to get to a certain place. So we'll start out in the top right in the gear icon. That's where you're going to be a lot. Specifically, if you're setting up a new company, you're going to be hearing a lot. We're not going to go into the settings, but that's how you get to the settings. If you hit this gear icon on the top right, and then account and settings, manage users, that's how you would set up new users. Custom form styles, that's where you would create custom invoices, how it's presented even if you're emailing them. It's really important to get into that. That's how you get to your chart of accounts. Very important. That's basically the buckets if you're unsure of where expenses, sales, things like that, where everything is going into those buckets, and that's ultimately where your P&L and balance sheet reports are going to be classified as. So that's where you find your chart of accounts. And then, like I said, the lists here, you're going to be going to this a lot, I'm sure. So again, gear icon and then lists. So these all right here, you don't have to worry too much about these. If you want to, you can just click all lists because these particular lists are in this all list bucket. So if you don't remember that products and services is specifically here, you can just go to all lists and then you'll see that products and services is one of the options. You see it right there. Probably don't have to worry too much about the tools section right now. That's how you'd import. You can hit reconcile, but I can show you a different way to get there, budgeting, things like that. But I think the main thing at first when you're navigating QuickBooks Online is to know that that is how you get to your lists. And also too, like I mentioned before, usually multiple ways to get to the same place. You see these custom form styles here, which like I mentioned was how you create custom invoices, your chart of accounts. All of that is under all lists here. So I think the main thing that you need to remember with this very overview, top right gear icon is where you can go into your settings and your lists. So like I said, chart of accounts, recurring transactions, products and services. This is where you get the custom form styles, I said, payment methods, terms, attachments, and depending on different settings that you turn on, more things could be added to these lists, like for example, locations, classes, things like that. Again, top right gear icon, settings, lists. I would say in the very overview level, those are the 2 main things. You're going to find a lot of different things with those 2. So if there's something you want to change in your file, start here. If you want to change something that's not in here, so if you want to add a product or service, let's say you add new and then you don't see an option here to add a product or service, the next step I would say to check would go in all lists and see if there's an option there. That's kind of the 2 main places I would say you should go in order to try to find what you're looking for. So now we have sort of a kind of quick overview of the gear icon. You start out with this dashboard. I don't think it's incredibly useful, but it's just kind of an overview, so you can kind of look at things. I wouldn't really recommend. Usually you can navigate to certain things, so you can go to your invoices here, for example. So you can navigate to certain places using your dashboard, but I think there's usually probably better ways to get there. This is kind of more of just an overview thing. So we'll start out with both the left-hand panel here as well as the new icon, because they kind of interrelate with each other. So kind of the main categories that QuickBooks Online categorizes things as when it comes to actual transactions is customers. This may say clients for you. It may say donors. It depends on your settings. It could change. It could say different things, but basically customers, vendors, and then employees and other. And you'll see here you got sales, which is the customers, and then you got expenses, which is the vendors, and then you got banking, which is kind of the other and payroll employees. The reason I mention this is because this is where you can find a lot of the kind of same things within different places. So, for example, to create an invoice, you can either hit this left new in the new in the top left, and then under customers, you can choose invoice, and that'll bring up the screen to enter a new invoice. Or if you're used to going to sales a lot, you can click on sales, and then you'll see these tabs here. So under sales here, we see overview, overview, all sales, invoices, payment links, customers, product services, example. So that's a very common theme in QuickBooks Online. All these arrows, when you click on them, this is what shows up right here. So it may seem like a lot at first because there's a lot of different options, but really, again, it's just different ways to get to the same place. So again, going back to if you prefer going to the sales screen and you're used to doing that in your workflow, then what might make more sense for you to create a new invoice is to go to the sales screen, and then again, you'll see all these options either here or here. You can click on invoices, and then you'll see a link here for new invoice. All again, going to the same place. Another thing you can do is if you're looking at your customers, so you can either go to customers here by going to sales and customers, or if you just scroll over here, it'll come up and then customers. And then you can go through and look at your customers, and then right here, there's a link for action to create invoice. So probably the most straightforward is just to remember the top left here, new invoice. But just so you're aware, there's multiple places where you can go in order to create invoices. So depending on kind of where you're spending more of your time, depending on your workflow, if you're in the sales screen a lot, it might be quicker and easier for you to just create an invoice right here. If not, if you're just working on the dashboard a lot, new invoice. Kind of the same thing for all of these. So for receive payment, estimates, things like that, you can find them in a lot of these places right here. But just so you're aware, so that's kind of, again, the main categories would be customers, and this is for the sales stuff, and it also interrelates with everything in here. Same with vendors. So if you hit new, you can create an expense, bill, check. Same thing here. If you go into expenses, you'll see your expenses and vendors. If you go into your vendors list and you want to create a bill on them, you can choose the vendor. So let's go to vendors here. Same thing, create bill right there. Or if you prefer, again, create new bill. So again, just kind of so you get the understanding of sales expenses, multiple ways to get to the same place. I personally think that the most straightforward, if you're wanting to create a certain thing, create a bill, create an invoice, is just use plus new. And if you're afraid, one of the benefits, I think, if you use this screen is that you may see beforehand. So let's say we need to create a $241 bill, for example, to this insurance agency. If we're using it in the vendor screen, we may see an open balance and realize like, oh, we already have the open bill. But if you are worried about that, if you're using this screen here, just know that it will send you kind of a warning. So we went and created a new bill, and then we'll see right here that we already have a bill balance due of $241.23. So you'll be able to catch it that way as well if you are concerned about that. So for the banking stuff, so to get your bank feed in this left panel here, you can go over to banking. And this is also too where you'll see your rules and receipts. We're not going to get too much into like the specifics of what those are, but again, if you just scroll over here, you see banking rules receipts. Same thing. Once you click on it, banking rules receipts. You can also this is where a lot of the other stuff is here. So if you need to make a bank deposit, hitting this plus new, and then other, you'll see bank deposit, transfer between two accounts. They just added this pay down credit card. What we used to do before a lot was transfer if you paid a credit card from your checking to your credit card account. Now you can do a pay down a credit card, but if you're transferring between banks, if you're adding a bank deposit, anything like that, you can either go into your banking screen here, or you can hit plus new, and then under this other, you'll see a lot of those banking options. But so this is how you get into the bank feed. You'll be using that a lot, I'm sure. And then since we're on that topic, once we're done with the month, with the bank feed and everything, in order to reconcile your bank statements, if you go under accounting here, again, you have just another option to go to your chart of accounts. Like I said before, you can get to your chart of accounts either here, all list chart of accounts, or if you go to accounting, chart of accounts. Multiple ways to get to the same place. But anyway, if you go to accounting here, you'll see this option for reconcile. And that is where you can start reconciling your bank statements. One quick side note here is that if you use Acrobat PDF Reader, which is a free tool, you can open up your bank statements within it, open up a highlighter, and then kind of put them side by side. And then you can hit, click on the transaction for when you're bank reconciling in QuickBooks, and then highlight the transaction on the PDF. I use that all the time. So that way you can see line by line what's included, what's not. And then if your bank reconciliations are messed up, it's a really easy way to determine where the issue is without physically printing out the paper. So if you're working remotely a lot and you don't have access to a printer, or if you just don't want to pay the expense of using paper, or if you want to worry about the environment, things like that, it's a really quick and easy way to still highlight and bank reconcile virtually all online without actually printing out the bank statement physically. So that brings me to another point here. A lot of within QuickBooks Online, sometimes it's pretty crammed with information, and there's certain little things you can do in order to give you more real estate in order to work. So the main one is hamburger icon right here. So anytime you want to take away this left panel right here, you hit the hamburger icon, it opens the whole screen up. So let's look at a reconcile, for example. This is the same for all the screens, reports, things like that. So let's start a reconcile. Okay, so just by default, this is what your reconcile screen looks like. Doesn't really look that great to me because this is actually the information you're working with, and it's a very, very small portion of the screen. And especially too, like I said, if you have your bank statement on one screen and then you're trying to work with another, it could just be really difficult. You scroll down, it's a very small amount of the screen. So what you can do, so the first thing you can do is hit the hamburger, and that opens it up a lot right there. And then you'll always find in all these screens kind of different places to where you can give yourself more real estate. So for example, in the reconcile screen, you'll see this little arrow right here. You can click on that, and it'll bring this whole top portion up. Right here in the gear icon, so right now it's compact. If you want to make it smaller, you can do ultra compact. If you want it to be bigger, you can hit regular. So those are just a few ways to where you can give yourself, a lot more real estate whenever you're going through and reconcile, so you see a lot more information than having everything be really crammed. And anytime you need that left-hand panel again, hit the hamburger again, and it brings it right back up. Same in your report screen. So that gives a good kind of lead way into reports. So this is where you get to reports. In the left-hand panel here, you click on reports, and then so let's go through this. Hit the hamburger again, you give us more real estate. Your default with 3 favorites: accounts receivable, balance sheet, profit and loss. And then depending on your QuickBooks subscription, you may have more or less reports, more reports plus and Simple Start, for example. But you can kind of go through and see which reports are beneficial to you. And then you can either just star them, which will add them to your favorites up here, Or if you need to do a little bit more customization, what you can do is customize it a certain way. So let's say for this particular report, we always want to make it for last month, and you always want to make it be ran as cash. I'm not going to get too much into the customizations of reports, but there's a lot of different customizations you can do. But the main thing in this video is to know that you can just hit save customization. You can add it to a group if you'd like, and then you hit save. And then where that's at in your report screen is you'll see it here under custom reports. So that's how you can save rather than just favoriting the blanket profit and loss or something like that. You can kind of change the settings a little bit and then create them under custom reports. Same with management. We're not going to go into too much of this video, but this is where your management reports are. So if you're an office manager or a business owner and you want kind of a package PDF of all the different reports that you want, rather than printing out individual reports, this is where you can do that in the management reports. But you can search for reports. So if you don't feel like going through, if you want to try to find an unpaid bills report, for example, and you don't feel like going through, it kind of goes through business overview, who owes you, which is basically your vendors and expenses, sales and customers, kind of the same thing, sales, what you owe, expenses and vendors, so forth. But if you don't want to go through all that, you can just type in unpaid bills or whatever the report is you're looking for, and then you can click on it right there. This is where payroll is. If you're using QuickBooks Online specific payroll, there's a blanket taxes if you're using QuickBooks Online to pay your taxes, and then mileage again if you're using QuickBooks with the app to track your mileage. I'm not going to get into too much of the detail, but just so you know, that's where you get to those. Is again right here on this left panel. So the main thing, like I said before, is gear icon on the top right, settings, all lists, the plus new to create an action, and to view information, the left-hand panel, which you can create some actions off the left-hand panel if you want, but most actions you probably just want to do here into the top left panel here. Now let's create a transaction here. So just so you get the navigation of creating a transaction, this would be relatively the same workflow, whether you're creating an invoice, sales receipt, bill, expense, whatever it is. For this particular example, let's do an invoice. So you can either click the down arrow here and see your existing customers or vendors if you're doing a bill, or you can add a new one right here. It's a really quick way. If you just want to add a quick customer, you can do that. Let's go out of this for just 1 second. If you need more detail, so you can either, where you saw there where it said plus detail, if you want to do it in more detail as you're creating the invoice, or if you just want to create an invoice for now, but later on you want to go in and add more details for that customer, then that's where you would go into this left-hand panel here. So again, sales, customers, you'll find the customer that you just created and it'll show up here. So you just click on the customer. And then you can hit edit right here. And then it's the same screen, and then you can add more information, their payment information, their email, things like that. But anyway, let's go back into the invoice. So you choose your customer or vendor. If they already have information in there, it'll kind of, if you have this put on in your settings, it'll kind of start some information for you. You can turn that off if you want. If you have unbilled items, so if you, and I'm not going to get into too much detail of that, but a lot of times it'll pop up here into the right-hand panel here, so you can quickly add it to this invoice if you want to. The customer email will show up here if it's included in that detail. You can click send later if you want to run a report. If you send your invoices all in the same day, you can click send later here. Billing address terms, basically when they owe you. So let's talk about dates really quickly in QuickBooks Online. So there's a few shortcuts. So rather than putting in number dash another number and then the year, which you can definitely do, another option you can do is just type it out. So let's say we want 12/5/2020, you can just put 12/05/2020, enter or tab, and then it'll do that. Let's just say we did 12/05/20, tab, same thing. Another thing you can do, there's shortcuts you can do too. I'm not going to get too much into the shortcuts in this video, but just so you know, if you hit T, for example, it'll automatically bring it to today's date. So let's say we want to bill it for tomorrow. So let's hit T, which brings it to today's date, and then you can also hit the plus key, and that'll automatically bring it one day. Let's say we want to bring it to make it yesterday, hit subtract, it subtracts it a day. Just so you know, there's some few shortcuts you can do here. And you add your product and service anytime so you can either, this is again very similar whether you're creating a bill, invoice. This is a very common workflow and navigation in QuickBooks. But so you can either hit the down arrow and pick something. You can add new if you want to add something new, or let's say you want to do concrete like we saw there. You can just start typing. You'll see concrete, and then you can click it, and then it'll automatically sometimes do the rest for you. And then you can tab over if you want to put the amount. Hit tab again, and then we have the invoice. Another thing we want to mention in this video is that you can do calculations here if you want to. So let's say, for example, for this particular, we want $200 plus 50 times 3 minus 55 for whatever reason. You can actually put in the calculation there, hit tab or enter, and it calculates it for you. So you know, okay, $295. So you don't have to take out your phone or calculator, whatever it is, and do all that. It kind of just saves you time, especially if it's just a quick one. If you don't feel like doing the math or anything, you can just quickly just put in a calculation there. So save you some time if you're doing the dates with the shortcuts and the dollar amounts, but you don't have to, it's optional, but just so you know that that's an option. And then you just have basically, this is just kind of detailed stuff here. If you want to add an attachment, the message on your invoice, things like that. And then you can click the down arrow here, and this will give you more options. This is also a very common thing in QuickBooks Online. You'll see this a lot. So whether you want to hit save and new, save and close, or a lot of the times you'll see a save and send option. So save and close is just that. If you're creating a lot of different transactions in a row, this save and new saves you a lot of time. So let's say you're putting in a lot of invoices, a lot of bills, a lot of expenses, whatever it is. It's a lot quicker to just create the invoice, bill, whatever it is, expense, then hit save and new, and then it'll automatically bring up another, invoice, bill, expense, whatever it is, and you can start again. Rather than doing it, saving and closing it, which closes you out, and then you have to go in and then hit new, whatever it is again, it just saves you a lot of time. And you'll see the same kind of navigation and workflow in a lot of different places, again, in QuickBooks Online. It's very consistent like that. So let's say you're creating a chart of accounts, for example. Kind of the same thing. You create your chart of accounts, and then if you're creating a lot of them in a row, you have the save and close option here, or you can hit the down arrow, hit save and new, and then you can kind of just keep rolling if you're adding a lot of chart of accounts all at once.